I absolutely love film. Being forced to wait to see your memories really makes them that much more precious and special. And disposable cameras are the perfect entry point for many beginners to get into film. But sometimes you get back your photos and this happens. Your photos are too dark, they're blurry, your fingers were in the shot, and more than half of them look like unidentifiable garbage. Well, you will never have to worry about garbage photos again. We're going to fix literally all of that in this video. Let's dive right in to the most common mistakes when using disposable film cameras. The pictures are too dark. So disposable cameras tend to struggle with not getting enough light. Even though disposables are marketed as a turn off your brain, the camera does it for you, point and shoot, that's not actually true all the time. So with cheap point and shoot film cameras, all of the settings are 100% permanent and cannot be changed. So the settings that are used in these cameras are an average that are supposed to fit 99% of the situations that you're in. Except you and I already know that that's definitely not the case when these photos just come out way too dark. The very simple solution is to use the flash almost every single time you take a picture. You definitely need it indoors without question, and even when you're in the shade outside. Sometimes even when you're in broad daylight. Basically what we're getting at is using the flash will never ruin a photo. It can only save a photo, because even in broad daylight, there's no way that a little AAA battery is overpowering the sun anytime soon. So you might as well use the flash generously so that you can guarantee that there's going to be enough light for the camera to pick up. Mistake number 2, blurry, out of focus pictures. So when we talk about blurry photos, there's actually 2 reasons it could be blurry. 1 could be that it's out of focus, and 2 could be because of camera shake. So the thing with disposable cameras is that they're a fixed focus. There's no dial for you to spin to set the focus. Instead, it uses a really slow aperture, somewhere between f10 and f11, in order to get as much in focus as possible. And they do this to act as a universal catch-all, but that range starts at 1 meter away from the camera. If you're ending up with a blurry photo that's out of focus, it's because you're too close to the camera. And unfortunately, you know what usually happens within 1 meter from the camera? Selfies. This means that with any disposable camera or cheap point and shoot, all of your selfies are going to be out of focus. So the solution with selfies, give the camera to the person with the longest arms, or just hand it off to someone else to take. So as far as the camera shake, most of these cameras have a shutter speed right around 1/100th of a second. Now you may be thinking, wow, that's actually pretty fast for a camera. Not when you're racing the speed of light. So no, it's not actually very fast, and it can be easier than you think to introduce camera shake when you're taking a picture. So a very simple solution is to press the camera right up to your face and kind of use your face as an anchor to keep it still. Mistake number 3, and probably the easiest way to look like a photography noob, is getting your finger in the shot. While this mistake is probably the most embarrassing to make, it's actually extremely easy to do this on accident. And here's why. The viewfinder that you look through is actually just a hole in the camera. So the viewfinder up here isn't actually providing any value because this is not what the lens sees. The lens is over here, so what you're seeing up here is not what the camera is seeing. And here's what I mean. I could fully cover up the lens entirely, and I could still easily see through the viewfinder. So with this inaccurate view of what you think your picture is going to be, it's really easy to get your fingers in the way and think that you're safe. These Fujifilm disposables have this plastic lens bump that protrudes from the camera, which you can easily feel and safely rest your fingers against. But these Kodak cameras are completely flat on the front surface. So with these, it's very easy to hold it incorrectly and accidentally cover up the lens. In fact, while working on this project, in all 5 instances that my finger is in the shot were with the Kodak cameras and not the Fujifilm. So that's just something you should probably keep in mind. So let's say you've been avoiding all these mistakes. You were doing everything perfectly. There are actually still a lot of mistakes that you can make that aren't even involved with the shooting process and could still ruin your pictures. The mistake of taking too long to get your photos developed. On the bottom of every camera, it'll tell you the expiration date of the film. As film ages and expires, the sensitivity to light, color balance, and contrast shift over time. And what I imagine is most of you only use film when something eventful is happening, like if you're traveling on an out-of-country trip, or birthdays, holidays. And what ends up happening is you get pictures that are months apart, and I've definitely been guilty of this. Your film will start to get affected roughly around 6 months or so. Don't worry, it's probably okay, and you don't need to follow this perfectly or to a T. The odds are still in your favor that a usable picture will still come out. But if it's easily avoidable, and it totally is, you might as well preserve your precious memories. So if you know that you're not going to be using your camera for a while, but you also don't want to prematurely develop it when it's not fully exposed, simply put it in a Ziploc bag and throw it in the fridge. Film's expiration can be frozen when it's frozen. The fridge will work just fine for our purposes, but if you really care about extending the life of your film, then you can put it in the freezer. And when you want to shoot again, just let it naturally come up to room temperature and you're good to go. Which brings us to the next mistake: where and how to store your film. So let's say it's more short-term storage, so you don't necessarily need to put it in a fridge, or maybe you don't have access to one. Where you store the film in your day-to-day matters. Heat and humidity are both very bad for your film. Avoid these extremes if at all possible. So, common sense, don't leave your film in the car when it's 100 degrees. The next mistake is a pretty big factor that a lot of us probably don't think of. Odds are the times that you're shooting the most film is probably when you're traveling. X-rays are very bad for film, and they can definitely ruin it. TSA claims that 800 ISO and below is totally safe in their X-rays. That's not really true. And if you're even more unlucky, machines called CT scanners are your worst enemy. They will 100% ruin your film and are much worse than a normal X-ray. So, the solution: when you're going through security, very politely ask for a hand check. That's where they take your film around the X-ray and swab it by hand. And you might as well ask for it because odds are you've probably already experienced this, where they've stopped you, pulled your bag aside, because of your film, by the way, and swabbed it anyway. So you might as well ask and avoid getting the exposure to X-rays in the first place. Just mention that you've got some film and ask if they'd mind hand checking it for you. I've never had anyone tell me no. Be respectful and they'll probably help you out. Now, before I give this final tip, these videos take months of work to make. So if you learned something interesting today, please consider subscribing and like this video. It would mean a lot to me. Now for the final mistake, and this one's a little bit of a twist. The final mistake is using a disposable camera in the first place. Don't get me wrong, I love disposables. One of my favorite film photos that I've ever taken was from a disposable camera. I've shot on tons of them for years, even back when film was dorky and childish instead of trendy and cool. But if you're shooting a lot of them, this process can be pretty wasteful and also expensive. After disposable cameras are used, they just get thrown away. They're supposed to be recycled, but after you pass off that camera, there's no way to guarantee that that's actually going to be what happens. So long term, it's not really an environmentally friendly or sustainable process. So if you plan on continuing on capturing great, wonderful, vibey pictures, and you can handle putting in 1% more effort, then I'd highly encourage you to get a refillable point and shoot. They're basically non-disposables that you load up with film yourself, which also gives you the freedom to try different film stocks or even black and white. There are plenty of these cameras out there, but my personal favorites are the Kodak Ektar H35 and H35N. I have 1.5 million tutorials and videos on these cameras, and clearly the internet loves these cameras too. These cameras are special because they're half-frame cameras. So what that means is the pictures are smaller because they're cut in half, but it means that you also get to double the amount of pictures that you get. So if you loaded a standard 36 exposure roll into a half-frame camera, instead of 36, you'd get 72. And that alone stretches your dollar really far. So if you have even an inkling of a desire to learn about film photography, then watch all my videos. I've got plenty of stuff. Tutorials, reviews, essential tips. But if you don't shoot very often and you want to continue shooting on disposable cameras, my next video will be comparing these cameras side by side to see which one is better. I definitely think you'll like that video. Anyway, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, again, please like it. Do not forget to subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching.